So here's where we left off in the last videos. We just kind of found a confidence interval given the margin of error and the sample mean. Let's actually find it for this example problem so you could find it for the problem that we're dealing with the pre-test scores of the self-efficacy exam. So let's just say that we have this mean of 85 and we don't actually have the margin of error, because that's something that often we're either asked to calculate, but the calculator actually finds it for us as long as we tell it the sample standard deviation, the number of data points, or n, and the confidence level that we want. So let's find the 90% confidence level for the mean test scores. I chose 90% just to do something different than 95, which is the standard. So we're going to just do this on the calculator. So on the handout that you saw earlier, we're really going to just pay attention to the last column in the row for the t-test, because we discovered that it should be a t-distribution we're using since we have a sample standard deviation. So here we have a sample of 25 test scores with a standard deviation of 2.61. That should be made clear if it's the population standard deviation, but notice we say it's a sample of 25 with a standard deviation of 2.61, meaning that that 2.61 came from the sample. As soon as we know that it's a sample standard deviation that we have and we're dealing with means, we know that it should be a t-distribution. So the last column of the t-distribution kind of tells you how to do this on your calculator. Notice that it has two kind of things. It has data or stats, and that's because when you go on your calculator, you're going to be asked whether you want it to be data or stats. So data is if you have a list of data. And notice this one, the problem that you're dealing with, I did give a table with a list of data. So you could have selected this and after entering that data in a list, and it would have done everything for you. However, we also found the stats for it, meaning we found the sample mean, we found the sample standard deviation, we have the sample size, so we could have gone either way. So let's see how this works. For our problem, we know we're going to do a t, so follow kind of the path here. It's stat, you slide over to tests, you scroll all the way down till you hit t interval. Notice the interval means confidence interval, so you see we have a z interval, a t interval. If you keep scrolling down, you're going to see that we have some other intervals that maybe some of these we might use in the future, but not now. So let's go to t interval, hit enter, and you see here's where it asks for data or stats. So say I went over data, it's going to ask you for a list. So if I had entered the list of the data that I had in L1, I would just give it the confidence level and hit calculate and I'd be done. But in this case, I'm going to use stats since we did do those calculations. So let's enter our information. So this had a mean of 85. It had a sample standard deviation of 2.61. Move the keyboard up a little bit so you can see. The number of data points was 25. Notice it doesn't ask for the degrees of freedom. And then the confidence level, make sure you enter that kind of as a probability, like as a decimal rather than a percentage. And we said this was 90. You go down, hit calculate, and then it shoots it out for you. These two numbers on top are our confidence interval. So it's between 84.107 and 85.893. Notice it also tells you your mean, your sample standard deviation, and your n. But that's the confidence interval right there. You are done at that point. So once you have that information, you could finish.